eradicate poverty and provide good governance. To date, how would you judge your performance?
Well, I think you can see it by the attitude of our people. And perhaps I can put it in a context. When I was a congressman, I had occasion to talk to this group of students who were taking nursing. There were about 80 of them, and I asked them, how many of you will be serving in the country once you graduate? And out of the 80, there were 2 that raised their hands. The rest were thinking of leaving. So I think our people were voting with their feet. And again, put it in the proper context. What did I inherit? For instance, we were told that we will perpetually have to import our staple, which is rice. Now, contrast that to my Secretary of Agriculture stating that by 2013, there is a very distinct possibility we'll be a net exporter of rice.
I guess one of the problems, though, with this country is corruption. It is endemic. It has been for decades. And you believe that something like $6 billion is lost to corruption each year. Are you winning that battle?
We're winning. Well, we're not stopping the efforts, no. We have already cases pending, even against my predecessor. My predecessor actually is in jail, undergoing trial for electoral sabotage. And there are other cases that are in the works. So we're preparing all the necessary evidence and going through all of the procedures. We're trying to expedite the cases so that there is certainty that there's conviction and jail time for people who have violated and transgressed our laws. The problem was nobody was charged, let alone convicted previously, and that sustained all of the endemic corruption that we have had to deal with.
President, you mentioned your predecessor, Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, and she has been charged with election fraud. If found guilty, she is facing life behind bars. Are you singling her out?
No, we're not singling her out, but she was at the head of misgovernance. And as chief executive and chief executor of our laws, no, all of the transgressions should have been under her purview, and she should have done something about it.
I'm sure there are plenty of people here in the Philippines who don't want you to dig too deep because this is rampant. I mean, you are potentially opening up a Pandora's box.
Well, the vast majority of our people were the victims, and I'm sure they would want me to pursue all of these cases. Those that would resist it were those who benefited from the status quo, and who would want the status quo to remain where they are lording it over everybody else. And that, in turn, this corruption has lessened the opportunities available for our people.
Well, your critics would say that you are overstepping constitutional boundaries and that you are targeting the opposition. No. What's your response to that?
They are part and parcel of the government. The power is divided into 3 branches, and each branch will have the power to check on the other. And the power of the purse belongs to Congress, for instance. So if there are policy we want to implement, they don't agree with, they don't agree with, they can withhold funding. Now, there is a check on the judiciary also, and other constitutional offices, which is the impeachment process.
Well, your approval ratings, they stand at 70%, and mainly because of your anti-corruption drive.
I would like to think it's not just the anti-corruption drive, no, but actually...
But people see you as being serious about this issue, an issue that has plagued your country for decades. So finally, you know, someone is standing up against it. But can you assure us that you will stamp out corruption?
Well, again, my predecessor, the chief executive of this land, is presently facing charges. When was the last time that something like that happened? Now, we believe that the cases we filed are proper, are well evidenced, are well supported by evidence, and that there will be conviction at the end of the process. That sends a message. The most powerful person can wind up in jail. Those of you who are lower than the most powerful should really wonder whether or not the arm of the law will finally reach you.
But Gloria Arroyo's predecessor, Joseph Estrada, he was also charged with corruption, and yet she pardoned him. Will the same happen for Gloria Arroyo if she is found guilty?
I think my constituents would not agree with my pardoner, and I act only on their wishes.
A short time ago, there was an exchange of gunfire as the bus driver escaped out the window. He ran past the media until the media surrounded him, and he said that everybody was dead.
Dramatic hostage drama is unfolding in front of us. Tell us the latest of what's happening here, and we're just waiting for an end to all this.
Your tourism industry took a big hit in 2010 after the bus hostage crisis. How damaging was that for your country?
There were cancellations, especially from Hong Kong, but from mainland China, I understand there was hardly a ripple. But still, we pride ourselves on our hospitality, and things like that shouldn't happen to our guests. So we have instituted quite a number of measures, both in terms of the police and security forces, no? But also with regards to the conduct of the judicial system. The issue of the dismissed police officer was, he was caught in a catch-22 situation. Yeah, there was a decision adverse to him. He said he made a motion for reconsideration, and there is an internal rule that says something like, it has to be acted upon by days, no? And it was 9 months into the process. He was close to permanent retirement, and the penalty was forfeiture of all pay and benefits. He had to get a decision on his motion for reconsideration before he could elevate the case, and he never got it. And there's so many factors that contributed to the tragedy and the turning at the last moment.
Of course,
So we've instituted, again, changes, both in security services. Yeah, you'll note presence of police in the...
Would you say that was handled badly?
Of course, in hindsight, no, it could have been handled better. But given the situation where, you know, just not to relive the moment, but you had a guy who wasn't dead set on he was not a terrorist, no? He wasn't there to inflict terror on anybody. In fact, before we even started negotiating with him, there were 2 hostages that had gotten released.
Yeah.
And up to the early evening, it seemed to be just a question of meeting minimum demands, and it would have been settled peacefully.
Hoping to rebuild his country's image by drawing inspiration from his past.
Who do you take after?
I think both of them. I'd like to think that I took the good points from each one.
The son of a former president reflects on his parents' teachings and talks about his own entry into politics.
President, you are part of this amazing family legacy, and I guess there is just so much pressure that goes with it. Both your parents were just loved by the public. How does that feel to know, I guess, that sort of heavy weight on your shoulders?
But I removed a lot of the pressure from myself by saying that I'm not competing with my parents. Now they are the persons who taught me my ideology. They actually practiced what they preach. They're the exemplars and the role models. So how does one compete with the mentor?
Who do you take after?
I think both of them. I'd like to think that I took the good points from each one and came up with my own version of how to advance the ideology that they were espousing.
Your mother, who was the face of people power, really, wasn't she?
Yes.
Why do you think your mother was so loved?
I think she did exactly what she promised to do. She embodied trust. They saw a champion for their own wants and needs. It could be attained, would guide us into the right direction in my mother.
And is that something that you plan to do as well?
I think I've managed to establish enough of credibility that people, after they only talked about me running for office after our leader, my mother, had left. And I think I'm still guided by their principles, perhaps not on a physical basis, but a lot of the experiences that we shared from, most especially the martial law years, from 1972 onwards, to the time when she was in power and out of power, has given me the wherewithal to be able to deal with the problems that we have at the present time.